Dear Diary, today I take the next step in being an ADHD life coach at Indigo Hub. I can't believe it's happening. I want to build, create, and discover a place for us to truly be ourselves. I think this journey will be the Indigo Diary. Dear Diary, welcome world, and welcome to the Indigo Diaries, and welcome to Series 3, The World Through Our Eyes, with your host, me, Natasha Hickling. The Indigo Diaries is a podcast for those who want to learn about neurodivergency through ourselves and other people's experiences. And we're back today with Holly Martinson, and I'm not even going to do the whole intro of who Holly is. If you've been watching this, you should know by now, but if not, then go back and have a look. But all her information is below, as always. So welcome back, Holly. We've not done one for a while, so I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yes, I'm excited to be doing this together today. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, always. So we're talking about I feel like we've been going on kind of needs, self-care, and this came from our self-care session about boundaries. And I think that this, for me, is one of the hardest things in life to do.
It is absolutely so challenging and so hard. And I think, especially if we weren't taught the skills or weren't able to observe the skills earlier on in life, I think as an adult, it feels so complicated to try to learn about these things that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. And like I when people used to say to me, like, set a boundary, I'd be like, what is that? Like, what? So I'm going to go for you first, but like for you, what is a boundary?
When I think about boundaries, I know there are different types of them, and we'll get into that. I usually think right away about relational boundaries and about like the level of access that we give others into our lives. So if, for example, if we're being more vulnerable or transparent about someone and with someone, and we're not getting that kind of level matched, and then that can be a sign that the boundaries need to be readjusted, because that can open up room for challenges in the relationship, whether it's work or family, personal, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I think that word access, and that kind of goes into my definition of what, like, I'm really, I'm big on analogy, and on my course when we did about boundaries, we said about a castle and a moat. So like the castle is you, and then the moat around it is the distance between you and the outside world. And then like the drawbridge is the boundary. And it goes back to what you said, right? So if the drawbridge is open, you're giving people access to come inside, to your kind of space, your world, your everything. But then you also pull it up, and the castle, has the choice to put it up and down. Like you said, we have the access to put it up or down, but it's knowing why we need it down and why we need it up.
Well, and I just love the word that you used. Oh, first of all, I love this analogy. And then second of all, I love the word choice that you used, because I think that's where we can get tripped up, is maybe not realizing that we have a choice. And then you one of the first things you said was, people tell you, well, just set a boundary. But if we don't know what that is, or we don't realize we have a choice, it's just not that simple. Yeah. And so that choice is what's so empowering, I believe, and takes a lot of work to figure out, where that choice is and how to implement it.
Yeah, if only it was just, turning a key to pull up a drawbridge and put it back down, But what I think is really important is I didn't really realize this. There's different types of boundaries, right? Based on, there's emotional boundaries, whether, there's physical boundaries, space, time boundaries of what we give our time to, spiritual, energy boundaries, mental boundaries, relationship boundaries, and we could go on and on. And I think that that's really crucial, that it's not, a boundary is something that protects you from other people or other things, and protects you in your kind of yourself. But in every aspect of your life, we need boundaries, which I think is quite a lot. We having to implement that, because if we don't have boundaries, then we're not going to get exactly what we would need and want.
Right, right. I know I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but something you said made me think about this too, is, we think about boundaries, and which is right and good in terms of protecting ourselves, and that's where most of the work is, but it can also be protecting our relationships with others. So if we're in a situation where we don't know our needs, or um, it's difficult to maintain regulation, then we can actually be protecting relationships, from the other side of things as well. So
Yeah. And protecting other people's energy, other people's emotions, and our own, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
mean,
it's, and
I was going to say there's a lot of work to discerning and figuring this out, and
yeah.
yet the freedom that comes once there's that awareness or that understanding is really protective, and can help us kind of cultivate the lives that we want, that are intentional.
Yeah, and I think the intentional choice and giving what we want and need, right? Because a boundary is there to protect us and other people from our needs, right? Because everyone's got their own castle, right? And
Yes.
everybody's got their own stuff going on, their own walls, their own people inside, everyone's got their own stuff going on. And it's just about, how do we protect that for ourselves? How would we protect that for the people? So we get what we need and we get what we want. So would you say are some of the things that you think stop people from actually setting boundaries?
Oh, that's a great question. I think one of the first things is not realizing that there's a choice, not even realizing that it's acceptable
Mm-hmm.
to set the boundaries. And then I think being able to identify what a person's needs are. So if those needs can't be identified, then it's just nearly impossible to then put boundaries in place.
Yeah. It goes back
So
to what we've been talking about the whole time we've been speaking, is if you've not got that self-awareness, you're not going to
right.
have the awareness of other people either, right? If you're not aware of your own castle, you're not going to start looking at other people's.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I think too that it means that it could cause discomfort or disappointment. And so I know we'll talk about this in a future episode, but some of that fear of rejection or disappointing people can be too overwhelming to be able to put
Yeah.
boundaries in place.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what you said about choice, that sometimes what I find is our kind of nation society is seen, when you put a boundary in place, it's almost like you're selfish, like you're looking after yourself rather than looking after other people. And it comes back to what we say about self-care. You've got to put your own oxygen mask on first. It's not selfish, it's actually selfless, because you've got to put yourself first in order so you can be there for the people. And it can be really hard to put yourself first, or and then figure out what you need, and then be able to advocate, enforcing things, and then you have to then maintain it, and it's just so multi-layered.
It really is. And I think it might be important to discern too. I was just sitting here thinking sometimes there are things in life we have to do that we don't want, or we'd rather not, or we're tired and we just have to go ahead and do it anyway, as like a one-time scenario or a one-time commitment. And there's a difference between that and living your life constantly feeling like you're drained or overwhelmed, or like you're being taken advantage of, or whatever that looks like for each individual. And so there's a difference. It's about, like you said, that self-awareness and looking for patterns, and looking for where some of that discomfort is coming up on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think that's really crucial. Like, if your emotional, physical, time, energy, mental, all of that is overwhelmed and to the point, are your needs being met? And then if not, then what boundary can you put in place? Because boundaries don't have to be like, no, don't come in right now. It can just be, can you just give me a bit of space for 10 minutes? Or, making sure that you don't work till 10 o'clock at night, or it's that
Right.
thing of, boundaries are things that protect us and that give us what we need and want. It doesn't have to be texting someone, it can be in our own lives, having to make sure we do exercise to keep us going, or go for a walk rather than sitting in and watching TV. It's these boundaries that we set that
give us the best life that we need.
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess sometimes I think about it, as you said, as a lot of no's rather than cultivating the life that you do want and making sure that you're preserving and protecting time and energy, mental energy and things like that, so that you can do the things you do want and focus on when you want to have in your life and what you do want your work or your relationships to look like.
Yeah, I like that. It's like, what do you want it to look like? And then when you know what you want it to look like or what you need it to look like, then you know what you need to put in place in order to make that happen. I think that's but one of the pitfalls I always found is that this need, especially in the ND world, is this need to say yes. The impulsivity or the rejection, which we'll go into next time, about saying yes. And this, we're looking at it. But someone said to me once, if you say yes, what are you saying no to? You know, if you say yes to this, are you saying no to something else that is for yourself?
That is brilliant, and it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
And I think it comes back to that, maybe that fear of disappointing someone or letting them down, or if you're getting something from the relationship and that's no longer available, then by saying no, then you might be letting go of something you need, and then what comes in to fill that gap. But I love that, like it's kind of an indirect no by saying yes to something. Yeah.
Like we're saying here, like it doesn't have to be a boundary, doesn't have to be, there was something that I learned a while ago about 3 different types of boundary levels, right? It doesn't need to be a solid, like, say no every single time, right? It doesn't need to be, we need to say yes. It can be a middle ground of, we could, I don't know, think about it for 24 hours before we say yes, or say yes to, have a signal of what we want to do. And they're called like solid, spongy, and liquid. So liquid, where you've got literally no boundary, right? You've got absolutely, the drawbridge is open all the time. Spongy is when you choose to do it. And then solid is when you're just closed all the time, because it can go too far the other way, where you have so many boundaries that you're not living your life the way you want it, or so little. Right. It's that all or nothing, and we need to get it just right.
And, I think that's when I'm just feel like that's a lifetime's worth of work. I don't know if there's necessarily mastery of this. I think there's learning and there's lessons and there's opportunity to do things differently. And I think it's a lifetime of just reflection and awareness and adjusting.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So we're going to come back and we're just going to dive a little bit deeper into boundaries. And then next time we've figured out that we're going to go a bit more deeper into a topic around boundaries. But we'll be back after the break, and we're out. If you would like any more information on Indigo Hub or our Indigo support group, then please check out our website below, or our link to our social media platforms, or email at indigohub.adhd@gmail.com. If you would like to offer any comments, feedback, get support, or if you're interested in the world hearing your story, then please reach out through any of our avenues. As said before, have a positive week. Check in again later. And we're out. And we're back. And yet again, we start talking. It's like, record. So we were talking before about boundaries. And I think we've both just kind of come to this place of like, we've talked about what they are, what can stop us from getting them, different boundaries. But we think that before we kind of go into like how to set boundaries, it's all about that self-awareness key. And next time we think we're going to do about people pleasing and RSD, and then how to set boundaries around that. And that will be a bit of a longer episode, but we feel like we're going to invite you, we're going to do something a bit different today. We're going to invite you into a space to give you kind of like a self-awareness activity, if you choose to take it, to kind of figure out where your boundaries are right now.
And I would just join you on that and say one possible way to start would be to just look at where are you feeling healthy? Where are you feeling, if not happy, content, or at peace in your life? And then where is there discomfort, or where is there maybe resentment building or exhaustion or something that's not feeling so good? And then thinking about how you're experiencing that in your body, and your emotions, how you're behaving.
Yeah, I think that's really nice. Like, look, almost, and how you do this is up to you. If you want to write it out, draw it out. When I did boundaries, I did a very similar thing where I wrote like all different parts of my life. I wrote like the emotional, physical time, and then wrote like what was going on for me. Like, what was going on for me? Is it content? Is it all right? And then I knew then what boundaries I need to set. Or where in my life I need to concentrate on. So it's very similar, looking at all those things, but in all the different parts of your life, where, like you said at the start, Holly, where are the patterns?
It is. And you just gave me an idea that for some folks, this might look like journaling, writing out. And for other folks who are more visual, it could be, drawing little sketches of yourself in relation to those different areas that you mentioned, Natasha, which so there's not a right or wrong way to do this. It's just to tap into what's meaningful for you and how you can express that. So
because when we can work out where our needs are not being met, then we can work out how to actually set a boundary and what to do with that, which is what we'll do the next episode, where we'll talk about actually from that self-awareness, how do we actually set boundaries? And then with setting boundaries, especially with people, becomes rejection and people pleasing. So we're going to really dive into those topics, because that's where we both came up with. That's really big, especially in the ND world, but just in the world. I think that stops a lot of people from setting boundaries.
Yes, I would definitely agree.
Yeah. So we invite you to try this. If you don't want to try it, that's okay, right? Wherever you are in the space, but this could be a first step to finding out what boundaries you actually need, what drawbridge you actually need and what that could look like. So thanks again, Holly.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the next time we can talk a little bit more in depth.
Any last thoughts?
I would just say that this is a really big and broad topic and can sometimes be overwhelming. And as we were kind of chatting earlier, just starting small in whatever process feels right for you.
Yeah. So that's why we wanted to kind of start this small before we get into that. So you can come back next time if you want with something, and then we will give you something else to go on to actually then take the next step and set those boundaries. So yeah, again, we leave you with lots more things to think about, because I know at the end of every episode, I'm like, okay, I've got so much to think about now. And we hope that this resonates for you. And just like Holly said, it's not one size fits all, right? This is a lifelong thing. Just because you're not got boundaries here, you need that that's okay, right? It's a journey. And that's what we're doing here. We're just trying to help you along that journey. So we hope you come back, listen, and look through the world, not my eyes, but our eyes. And we're out.
Dear Diary, as Indigo Hub's process goes on, it makes me stop and wonder, could there be more for us? More light, more experience, and more ways to see the world through our own eyes? I think this journey will be the Indigo time.